Our story begins in the rural South. Nina Mae McKinney was actually born Nanny Mamie McKinney on June 12, 1912, in Lancaster, South Carolina. Her mother, Georgia, endured a violent and abusive marriage, and it wasn't long before she made a desperate escape, seeking refuge in the home of Colonel Leroy Springs. Now, Colonel Leroy Springs was a wealthy industrialist for whom she worked as a maid, but even still, she knew there had to be something better. So, with a baby in her arms and the weight of an uncertain future on her shoulders, Georgia knew she had to keep moving. By 1920, Georgia had relocated to Savannah, Georgia, taking up work as a cook, while young Nanny remained in South Carolina, in the care of her 70-year-old grandmother, Mary A. McKinney. Nanny's father, Hal, he tried to support them. He worked as a delivery man for a local drugstore, but his demons of alcohol and violence never really loosened their grip, and over time, his visits became less and less until he just was never seen again. That same year, her mother, Georgia, made another bold move, this time heading from Savannah up to New York in search of a better life, but once again leaving Nanny behind. And as if life had already been unsteady for the young girl, tragedy and instability followed. When her grandmother died, Nanny was shuffled from relative to relative like a piece of misplaced luggage. And eventually she landed in the home of her great aunt, Carrie Sanders, who, like her mother before her, worked for the influential Colonel Springs. It was here, in the grand but unwelcoming house of this powerful Southern aristocrat, that Nina Mae McKinney, her fire first sparked. By 1923, at just 11 years old, she was put to work as a live-in domestic, delivering and collecting parcels from the local post office. But Nina found ways to turn even the most mundane tasks into a performance. She would ride her bike through town and she would, perform these little daring tricks just to entertain herself and the people that she passed. And yet, she knew in her heart she was destined for something beyond Lancaster's dusty streets. At this point, the lights of New York were calling her, and soon she would answer. At 13, Nanny Mamie McKinney became Nina Mae McKinney, a name she carried into the jazz-filled, neon-drenched speakeasies of Harlem when she moved to New York to be with her mom. In the summer of 1927, Nina left school behind for good, deciding that her education would come from the rhythm of the streets and the music of the clubs. It wasn't long before she caught the attention of Porter Granger. Though still just a girl, her voice carried the wisdom of an old soul, and Granger wrote two songs specifically for her: Dying Crapshooter's Blues and The Band'll Play. Who'd have thought it? The recordings made at Brunswick Studios in 1927 were never officially released, but they were proof that Nina was on the verge of something big. Now, opportunity often comes knocking quietly, but for Nina, it came in the form of a daily ritual. Walking back and forth outside of the casting office where King Vidor was looking for talent for his ambitious new film, Hallelujah. Day after day, she made herself visible. And then, just like that, it worked. She landed a small role in the film. But Hollywood had other plans. When Honey Brown, one of the film's lead actresses, was injured, the spotlight suddenly turned to Nina. And with one announcement, she became the new star of Hallelujah, an all black musical drama, the first of its kind in mainstream American cinema. Now, Hollywood had never seen anything like Nina before. Her energy, her presence, her undeniable beauty. Yeah, MGM knew it had something special. And at just 17 years old, Nina Mae McKinney signed a 5-year contract with MGM, making her the first African American major film star. Her career, it seemed, was unstoppable. She performed in jazz clubs, recorded new songs, and even found herself entangled in scandalous romances with Hollywood actresses, foreign royals, and Harlem's elite. She was living fast, and the world couldn't get enough. But Hollywood has a cruel memory. It remembers what it wants and discards what it doesn't. And soon Nina Mae McKinney was about to learn that even the biggest, brightest stars can be extinguished too soon. Despite her contract, MGM barely used her. Sure, she had supporting roles in Saving Hell and a few other projects, but the studio just didn't know what to do with a black leading lady, especially in an era where segregation ruled. White Hollywood just wasn't ready for a star like Nina. And by the 1930s, Nina was growing frustrated. She started skipping promotional events, especially if her name wasn't in the lights above the marquee. She wasn't content to be a footnote in Hollywood's history, so she left. Europe, she thought, would be different, and in many ways it was. In Paris, London, and Athens, Nina was treated like royalty. Europe in the 1930s proved to be a welcoming stage. Nina's first stop was Paris in late 1932. In Paris, the nightlife was thriving, and black entertainers like Josephine Baker had already become sensations. Nina fit right in. She performed in Parisian cabarets, and her singing and dancing wowed international audiences. From France, she moved through the European circuit, followed by shows in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and then to Athens, Greece. Everywhere she went, McKinney's talent was met with admiration. European fans and press, less shackled by America's racial biases, simply focused on her artistry and allure. It was during this period that the European media fully embraced her, calling her the Black Garbo, a nod to her star quality. In fact, by 1934, advertisements in Greece billed her as the Black Garbo, right? She was being compared to Hollywood's biggest names. Nina also continued to make films, now in the British film industry. In 1935, she co starred with the legendary Paul Robeson in the British action film Sanders of the River. This colonial set drama featured Robeson, an African leader, and Nina as his wife, Lolongo. It was a significant role. Finally, a substantial part in a film again. I knew she loved it, right? Unfortunately, the experience turned sour. Both Robeson and McKinney were dismayed to discover that after filming, Sanders of the River was recut to emphasize colonialist viewpoints, basically undermining the positive portrayal of African characters that they had been promised. Their roles were heavily edited down, which left Nina once again more largely on the sidelines of the screen. Still, it was another milestone to have an African American actress in a prominent role in a British film. And working alongside a star like Robeson cemented Nina's status as a respected talent amongst her peers. Not only that, she became one of the first black performers on British television, which was huge. Imagine that. At a time when TV was a brand new technology, Nina's face was among the first seen on the tiny screens in London. She participated in the BBC's early television demonstration film in 1937 as well. Long before Americans even owned a TV, McKinney was showcasing black talent in this new medium. She starred in stage reviews and dazzled audiences who didn't see her as a second class citizen. She recorded more new songs and captivated kings and commoners alike. Again, critics and audiences loved her. And freed from Hollywood's typecasting, she was able to play glamorous, dignified roles on stage and screen. She sang with orchestras and dazzled in elegant gowns. For a few golden years, Nina enjoyed the newfound freedom that Europe afforded her. Freedom to be the star she truly was without the confines of American racism. But even as she built this international reputation, she never stopped dreaming of Hollywood and truly being able to conquer it. On top of industry barriers, Nina also faced a double edged sword of public perception. Some in the black press started criticizing her, perhaps out of frustration that she wasn't more outspoken or representative. And at one point in 1930, a magazine even accused Nina of trying to repudiate her race, an allegation that hurt her deeply and also led her to threaten a libel suit in response. And listen, you gotta understand that at this time, Nina was just a young woman trying to navigate fame in a racially divided world. She was too black for Hollywood's comfort, but suddenly deemed not black enough by some critics, and it was an impossible position. By 1938, with war clouds gathering in Europe, Nina decided to return home to the United States. She hoped that the tide might be turning back in Hollywood, that perhaps the success she found abroad and the skills she honed could translate into better opportunities on American soil. Nina came back to the U.S. in 1938 with optimism. She was now a seasoned performer, in her mid 20s with international fame under her belt. But America in the late 1930s was still the America she left, segregated and limiting. When she got back to America, Nina did find work, but not in the big studio pictures she'd hoped for. Instead, she did race films. Now, race films were movies produced by black filmmakers for black audiences, operating, right outside the Hollywood studio system. These independent films offered roles that Hollywood just wouldn't. And in 1938, Nina starred in the crime drama Gang Smashers, also known as Gun Mall. She played a daring nightclub singer who goes undercover to bust a crime ring, a role that let her be a smart, active heroine. Then, in 1939, she took on the title role in The Devil's Daughter, a black cast film set in Jamaica, playing a cunning character opposite actor Jack Carter. These films, although produced on shoestring budgets, gave Nina a chance to lead movies again. Posters billed her as the seductress of Hallelujah, reminding audiences of her famed debut a decade earlier. Now, while these race movies didn't have wide mainstream reach, they were treasured by Black audiences who rarely got to see themselves reflected on screen in complex ways. In the 1940s, Nina landed a few small roles in mainstream Hollywood films, though most of them were way beneath what she was capable of. In 1944, she had a brief appearance as a maid named Florella in the suspense movie Dark Waters, serving a character played by Meryl Oberon. That same year, she popped up, uncredited, and Together Again, playing a nightclub attendant in a quick scene with Irene Dune. It was hard not to notice the sad irony. Nina, once hailed as a rising star, was now being cast in tiny background roles, barely visible in the Hollywood machine. One of Nina's last notable film appearances came in 1949 with the film Pinky. Pinky was a high profile Hollywood drama about a light skinned black woman passing as white. Nina was cast as Rosalia, a gritty, antagonistic character who confronts the lead. Though it was a supporting role, McKinney sank her teeth into it, delivering a performance with real bite. But by then, over 20 years had passed since her debut. In Pinky, audiences saw a middle aged Nina Mae McKinney looking older than her years and worlds away from the ingenue who danced the Swanee Shuffle. Still, Pinky was a bittersweet triumph. It put Nina back on the Hollywood screen, if only briefly, and served as a reminder of her acting chops. By 1950, she announced she was pregnant, a glimmer of hope. But no child ever came. She drifted in and out of obscurity, making sporadic appearances, trying to reclaim the spotlight that once embraced her. But Hollywood had moved on, and younger black actresses like Hazel Scott, Lena Horne, and later Dorothy Dandridge were beginning to get the opportunities that Nina once dreamed of. Opportunities still limited and fraught, but slowly expanding by the late 1940s and 50s. By the early 1960s, Nina Mae McKinney had vanished. Her name, once shining on marquees, was now lost in time. She spent years overseas. Some say she was living in Greece. And when she finally resurfaced in New York in 1967, she was working odd jobs just to get by. Some even say she worked as a telephone operator. Then, on May 3rd, 1967, Nina passed away from a heart attack at just 54 years old. She died alone at the Metropolitan Hospital in Harlem. No headlines, no big farewell, no public tribute. Just like that, she was gone. And for a long time, the world forgot she was even here. But Nina's story isn't just a tale of what was lost. It's also a declaration of what was possible. In an era that locked Black women out of the frame, she kicked the door open. Before Dorothy, before Lena, before Eartha, there was Nina. She was the first. The blueprint, the warning shot, a comet of brilliance flaming out too soon, but lighting a way for everyone who came after her. And maybe the industry forgot her name. Maybe history tried to misplace her. But now, we remember. Not just the beauty, not just the starlet, but the fighter, the rebel, the dreamer in sequence. Nina Mae McKinney refused to shrink herself to fit in a world too small to hold her magic. She may have been overlooked then, but never again.